The following presentation was recorded live at CALLERLAB's 20th Annual Convention. This is tape number 16, Teaching Techniques.
It's 9 o'clock, and I guess we should be on the way. Is this thing on? 1, 2. Turn it up a little bit. How's that?
Much better.
You will probably find or recognize that the chairman this morning is a little on the nervous side. He is used to having a blackboard behind him, and whenever you change the scene and the situation and so on, it sometimes becomes a little disturbing to the nervous system. My name is Mac Marcellus. With me I have two gentlemen this morning who are much better known as far as square dance calling is concerned than what I am. On my right we have a chap who has spent his lifetime in the square dance business, has ended up on the convention circuit, etc., and owning his own record company and so on, in the person of Wade Driver. Wade, we welcome you.
Thank you.
On my left with me is another chap who is also involved in record business, producing his records for ESP, and is on the convention circuit, and states that he has been in the business since he was 11. He has something like in the name of person of Bob Newman. I am almost at the other end of the scale as far as the square dance business is concerned. I didn't get into the business till I was 40, and I should have known better. But anyway, those of you who were at the banquet last night, they did present me with a 25-year certificate for the square dance calling that I have done so far. I do have 35 years of teaching experience behind me, with a large number of years as a head of department. Now, it wasn't phys ed. We were involved with a technical educational program, and so I can teach you how to drive a nail much better than sometimes I can teach you how to square dance. But this is all part of it. So, because of my personality and so on, I have prepared what I want to say to you, and I'm going to start off and give what I think is important. Because of my background, teaching involved in square dancing is, to me, is one of the most important facets that we have in the business. Now, you all know that our square dance business is a large one, and we have many, many topics that we can sit down and discuss. What I have to say this morning, I hope some of you will glean some benefit from it. Some of you, I'm sure, will say that, oh, I don't need all that HS. But I hope that some of you will understand what we're trying to say, and it will be useful to you. I'm sure that there will be little argument about the fact that the act of teaching constitutes a large percentage of each square dance program. It varies depending on the type of program, but it is there always. If we check the dictionary for the meaning of the word teach, we will find reference to words such as communicate, instruct, train, educate, guide, discipline, and nurture. Each one of them may be used to indicate a type of teaching. In square dancing, communicate is probably the one that is most used. Reference to your handout should lead your minds to how the other words are used. When a person assumes the responsibility of giving knowledge to someone else, they assume the job of teaching. Where do I start? Where do I begin? In square dancing, our lists of basic, mainstream, plus, A1, A2, C1, C2, and so on provides information of what should be taught. Through years of experience of others, the lists have been put into a logical sequence for teaching. Courtesy turn before two ladies chain, for example. turn through before scoot back, etc. Work is continually being done to ensure that these lists continue to be the most suitable for the activity. In the business of education, these lists are known as course outlines. The next work of a teaching person, and I emphasize the word work, is to prepare a course of studies. What is a course of studies? A course of studies is an overall plan based on the time that will be available and the material to be taught. The time available may be 30 sessions, 15 sessions, or even just a weekend. First of all, prepare a rough outline showing the number of sessions available, each with lots of space for writing. By studying the course outline, divide the material listed on the course outline into groups equal to the number of available teaching sessions. Before dividing your material, allow some sessions for either complete dancing or review programs. 1 in 10 is a guide. Remember that the material you have listed is what you expect or hope to teach. At this point, there may be a lot of speculation on your part as to your progress. The planned review sessions will give you a chance to catch up with your plans. Beside each move, state the formation from which you plan to begin in. The arrangement. Learn to use the numbers as given in the formation booklet. 1, 0, half, 1, 2, 3, 4. The relationship of each person in the square and the resultant formation and arrangement. If there is an equivalent, show this as well. Short sequences can be written for the formation and arrangement you plan to use for that lesson. As well, list the material that is to be retaught from the last session. If possible, plan to use the next, more difficult positions near the end of your reteach. The course of studies should contain as much information as possible on the material if it is to be successfully taught. Experience of teaching your subject will gradually dictate to you whether the amount of material, the things you thought you could do, are possible. This will, in all likelihood, lead to changes in your course of studies. It may be increasing the amount of material, the sequences you use, the way that you taught. More than likely, it will be a decreasing of the amount of material at least. In any case, plan your work and work your plan. Next thing we want to look at is teacher preparation. Most of us have heard the remark, he or she is a good teacher. Do they ever know their stuff? If you were to select one factor in the game of teaching which yields poor results, I am sure that you would agree that it has to be lack of knowledge on the subject being taught. Teacher knowledge helps to lead to successful teaching. And I would like to offer the following as suggestions for preparation. First, for the move you are going to teach at your next session, A, read, learn, understand the given definition, determine what happens to the square in the process of performing the move. Does the formation change? What is the change in relationship of those in the square? Is it the equivalent of a previously known move? 2. Select the easiest and most common arrangement to commence the move. Check your standards application booklet for this help. It could save you a lot of frustration with poor results. 3. Select only the words necessary to tell the dancers how to perform the move. If possible, Use known information to describe the new info. Work from the known to the unknown. Example, scoot back. Those looking at someone step forward and do a turn through as the others run to the vacant spot. 5. Memorize your words and use less and less as the move becomes known to the dancer. 6. Develop the ability of giving direction to the dancers in a manner which gives the dancers time to understand in their minds what you are asking them to perform. Let the dancers hear your direction before any movement takes place. This may not work for everyone on the floor, but enough are able to picture in their minds the required action and will lead to a higher percentage of success and understanding. 7. Most square dancing is taught by communication with words, but the use of teaching aids such as a card table for square through or ceiling tile on the floor for grand square provides an interesting variety of teaching methods. 8. I like to work out short, typical sequences and solutions using the move being taught. Several of these provides variety to the dancer as well as learning practice. Some of these may be worked into a singing call sequence. 9. Be prepared for the unexpected. Such mental preparation helps to keep frustrations hidden. Program for your teaching session. In my case, where two of us usually work programs, we have found it necessary to put down on paper what each one is expected to do. For those of you not aware of it, I am also married to a caller. And because of the fact that we do our dances tip about, I usually start off first. It is necessary for one of us at least to decide what we're going to do. So I usually have the job of putting down on paper what we expect to do during each particular tape. And Orphea has enough experience that she comes along and fills in and helps me out quite often. So this is what we're referring to. When we put it down on paper, we don't always get it done, but there is at least an attempt not to repeat. We have developed the following methods or type of program. Tip 1, warm up. List the moves to be used. Include those taught prior to the last 3 sessions. Tip 2, review teach of the last session's moves. If possible, considering use the next most difficult position or relationship. Tip 3, we teach new material. Tip 4, use and reteach moves from 2 sessions before. Use, if possible, with moves from tips 2 and 3. Tip 5, use moves previously taught but not used in the former part of the program. Try and include moves either taught or reviewed in this session. Tip 6, relaxing tip, make them dance, use well-known material. Next topic is review teaching. Review teaching should be a big part of the program. We are all different. Some of us learn quickly. Some of us are slow learners. Some of us can listen and learn. Others have to be shown. Others have to be told, shown, and gently nudged before the idea begins to sink into our thick skulls as learned and understood material. A good friend of mine claims that it's a good job we are all different, otherwise we'd be all after the same woman and then there would be trouble. Anyway, before reteaching, first, take a look at yourself. Do a self-criticism of what you did during your original teach. think of ways of improving your lesson. 2. Using your results of your appraisal, reteach your lesson. A. To reaffirm the move in the dancer's mind. B. To educate those who missed the first teaching session. C. To provide further guided practice. D. Make use of the move as often as possible. Practice makes perfect. E. Be prepared to reteach with each new arrangement and formation. Each change for the dancer is another segment of information to be learned. F. Be prepared to reteach a third time next session, and maybe the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. Learning is the result of teaching and study with understanding. Most of square dancing is learned by teaching using words through a microphone and speakers. Some is learned by teaching with physical demonstration, either by other people or by physically moving the dancer through the move by individual instruction. Some is learned by dancers reading help sheets or books. Most material is learned by repetition of the required move or information. As mentioned before, each dancer learns at a different rate. Some learn by different methods. Persons learn to react according to the number of performances of the material or move. The greater the number of performances, the faster the reaction, and the longer the retention of knowledge. Practice makes perfect. If the dancer can't dance, maybe the caller hasn't called. Before I turn this program over to Wade and Bob, let me say that I realize that what I have said is very school teacherish. And I'm sure that those of you who have full-time jobs and call 2 or 3 nights a week will say, I don't have time to do all of this stuff. But if you make an effort to do some planning, some studying of your teaching methods, results are guaranteed to be better. Poor teaching and no planning is probably the biggest culprit for the loss of dancers to our square dance activity. And I think I've said enough, and I think I will turn it over to either Wade or Bob, whoever would like to go first. Maybe we'll turn to Wade there. Thank you.
All right. Well, there has to be a devil's advocate in every group. You know, if you took the letters E-G-O, and I believe let's go right to the source of the problem, okay? E-G-O. Now, you either got 3 letters or you got 1 word. Those 3 letters stand for everybody's got one. All right? Sadly to say, and in this august body, it fills the room. In our profession, it fills the room. You know, I was making some notes, and I thought we should add 1 figure to every list. Every list, mainstream, basic, plus A1, 2, C1, 3, C7, I don't care. It should be called and cringe. It should follow such moves as all 8 circulate and cringe, turn through and cringe, because you know half the floor is not going to do it. All right, now at least I look at it this way because I am very privileged to call for so many other folks as dancers quite often. And the first time you call these moves, that's just what happens. You call it and you cringe and you wait and see what happens, and they do it all right. It's like, whew, made it through another day. Okay? That should not be. How many guys in here, now, ladies, guys is generic. Okay? All right? Let me say it understood right up front. How many guys in here think teaching is the strongest part of their calling profession, or calling abilities? If that was so, our dancers know how to dance. Now, the problem is, and I agree, and all right, I'm not putting anybody down, I'm just saying that you're wrong, all right, in my opinion, and I am opinionated. all right? Because in traveling, and I talk to a lot of guys who do travel all over the country and all over the world for that matter, and our dancers know some things really well and some things not at all. And the ones they don't know at all is because we don't know them very well. So if we don't know them very well, we're not going to teach them. You know, it's very difficult to teach something we're not comfortable with. So it's just easier to say, well, and they say, well, why don't you teach that? I don't like that move. You don't like that move. You don't know that move. You don't understand that move. Okay? The philosophy of teaching, and don't get me wrong, because everything on this page is absolutely right, and if you do everything on this page, you're not going to have a problem teaching your classes. The problem is we're not going to do everything on this list. And the one we're not going to do, or we're going to do the least, is, where is that thing? Read, learn, understand the definition of the material. Okay? A lot of times I ask guys, what do you teach? And they say, well, I teach the CALLERLAB definition. Why? That's not for dancers, that's for us. Our job is to interpret that definition and communicate that physical movement to the folks that you're trying to teach. And it's difficult. Now, I've done a considerable amount of teaching and coaching myself, not some time, been too lazy trying to call for the last 20 years, but prior to that, I taught in elementary school, high school, and also at the university level, and also coached. And I find that sometimes this falls into the category of coaching as much, or if not more than actually teaching, because you've got to transcribe in your mind and in your communication to the dancer. You've got to take words to describe a physical movement, and that's one of the most difficult things for a teacher to do. It's easy to put numbers on the blackboard because they can look up there, they can see them, they write them down, and they have them. But you're dealing with people of various physical attributes whose hand-eye and foot coordination is they're totally different and totally varied. And I challenge you guys, and all callers, and it's sad you're the only ones here in this room because you're the only one I can fuss at, all right? But for everybody, to learn our material and learn how to interpret that definition and pass on to the dancers. For example, and Lord knows I fall in the same category, I've taught at least one or more classes now every year since 70, I guess, so 23 years. And now, of course, being in Mesa with the retirement programs, I teach one class at every level every year. Oh, and I know Bobby does too. It's one of those great enjoyments. And I really enjoy it because, let me tell you what, you take a couple who are 83 and 82 years old respectively, and you start off in October, and the following April you take two people that in 80 some odd years have never set foot on a dance floor, and all of a sudden, for the first time in their life, they're out successfully moving to music. That feels good, folks. That feels good. Now, granted, there are times during that 25 weeks I'd like to kill them. I don't deny that in the least, all right? You know, puts an early end to this thing, all right? But nonetheless, that's our job. That's what, you know, that song, that country western song about the daddy, that's what I do. That's what I do. That's my job. Okay? That's your job, too. And it isn't your job to teach them halfway. Now, for example, it took me 15 years to finally figure out that ladies are not inherently right-handed, so when you teach a right and left through, they don't just dash off to the right because they're right-handed. It's because that jerk that pulled them by didn't let them go. And he pulled them around to the right. Took me a long time to finally see that, but everybody in this room ought to know that because we ought to share that information. And yes, the definition of a scoot back is those looking in turn through and the others run to the right. What if they don't understand that? You better have 3 or 4 other ways of describing that thing to those dancers. You know, maybe you might want to do an extend and the centers trade and the outsides flip over and face in. Those facing in get eyeball contact, reach out with the right forearm and turn them to the right and come back to the girl you left. I don't care what kind of language I use as long as it's clean, you know, but you're dealing with math professors and garage mechanics. You're dealing with IQs of 100 to 180, maybe 70 to 180. You're dealing with those who maybe have a little senility of set in. You're dealing with kids who say, don't tell me again, I've already got it. Okay? You know, you deal with everything in between. And I suggest that you have at least 5 ways of describing every single figure that you're going to teach. And then you're not going to get them all, because the first one's going to get half of them, second's going to get half of that half, and the third one half of that half, and the fourth, and so on. And there's always going to be 5% that never get the word. Always has been, always will be. You know, they just kind of muddle along and look to see where everybody else is, and they go to the empty spot. You know, you're never going to get rid of those. Now, preparation. Preparation not only includes memorizing and knowing that CALLERLAB definition, which we all have the obligation and the responsibility to know, but we must have some way in your mind and through proper planning, proper preparation of knowing, all right, if I tell them this the first time, and what if they don't understand that? How am I going to explain it the second time? And if that doesn't get everybody, how am I going to explain it the third time? And so on down the line. Because as in coaching, you got 5 things that you really, we got a lot more, but mainly 5 things that you really lean on. One is knowledge. All right, coach better have knowledge right up front. And this is what we're talking about now. Knowledge is not just can you do it, all right, but can you tell somebody else how to do it? You don't know it so well that it's like the back of your hand. You like know it as well as your name. Attitude. All right, and let's face it, I love to call it, goes in, but why? He says, I just couldn't get them to dance my dance tonight. And the first thing I think of is, why didn't you call their dance? Didn't you win? Okay? You're not trying to get them to do your dance. Your job is to call their dance, so they win. And your attitude is so important when you go in a set of classes, because your attitude has to be based on your desire to teach that class. If you're sitting on the sofa at home or sitting around a dining room table and think, God, I don't want to teach that class, go find you a substitute, because you're going to fail, okay? You're going to fail. If you've got to force yourself to go do it, you're in the wrong place. That's my opinion. What are your goals? What is the ultimate goal of this thing? If I'm sitting there on lesson number 1 and I've got fortunate enough to have 5 squares of beginners eagerly awaiting to learn standing on that floor, when I finish, my goal is to graduate 5 squares, not 4 squares and 3 couples. Not, boy, I managed to get 2 squares through them. Wow, no thanks. My goal is graduate 5 squares. All right? What's my motivation? I got 2 kids out of college, 1 in and 2 to go. I got to pay for it. Simple enough. In my case, everybody has different motivation. All right, you may want to keep your club healthy. Okay? I want to keep my program in Mesa healthy. We're continually talking about the upward mobility of the dancer. They want to move up. And you're always going to have that who want to continue to achieve more and move up in levels. And that's going to leave a vacuum if we don't fill that vacuum. So your desire, your goals, your knowledge, your motivation, all is going to affect your attitude. If you're sitting there at home and you've got your lesson plan done, that's a word we're familiar with, is it not? If you've got your lesson plan done, and you know what I'm going to teach in first tip and second tip and third tip, and I know exactly how I'm going to describe it, don't tell me you aren't excited about going. You are. You're prepared. It's no different than it was when you were in the 10th grade in high school. If you had your homework done, you'd studied, and you're ready for that test, it's Mama, get me up at 5 because I'm ready to go to school. But if you didn't, it's my stomach hurts and I don't really feel like going to school today. And that's attitude. All right? And in my opinion, your attitude is based on whether you're prepared to teach. You know, it always amazes me. We always have the club caller calls for the club, and the new caller in town teaches a class. And I've never been able to understand that, why the best calls for the best and the weakest calls for the ignorant. And that's what we've been doing, okay? There's a club in Houston, Texas, which I only guest called for, but Bob Byer happens to be the caller for that club. And when they run classes, Bobby teaches the classes and guest callers call for the club because they want their dancers to be able to dance. All right? And it's the largest club in the state of Texas. Maybe that's coincidence, but I doubt it, because they keep their dancers, okay? And all I do is I charge you with knowing your material, knowing your calling abilities. If they are not good enough to teach, either don't teach or improve your ability. Preferably the latter. All right? our pyramid of dancers, which is supposed to have a large base, our base is crumbling. And it's going to continue to crumble unless we learn how to teach. Only my opinion, but that's what I feel. Thank you.
Thanks, Wade. I asked Wade to give us some down-to-earth opinions, and he has done that. So we'll turn it over to Bob and see what he has to say.
Thank you, Mac. Thank you all for being here with us this morning. I was prepared, but these guys said everything I was going to say. So we'll probably just review and reiterate some things. Perhaps I'll hit on an item or two that they didn't cover. I, too, am privileged to be a part of the Winter Texan program in South Texas, so teach something like 5 or 6 classes at various levels every week. Along with that comes some experience. May not always be good experience, and may not be some of the things that you all may not be able to relate to, or maybe you can relate to. When beginning a class at any level, I try to start with a master plan, which we've covered before, a master plan for the overall course, and then a session-by-session plan. On a day-to-day basis, though, these plans have to be very flexible, because if you come into the morning session or the afternoon session and say, at this particular level we must cover X amount of terminology in so many different fashions, and it happens to be a full moon or something, you don't get past the first one. And that's all right. So you just back off and say, well, we'll pick that up in the next session. If those plans don't work, for an example, you as a caller can become very frustrated. When you become frustrated, that rubs off on your dancers. Philosophy I have for teaching, especially, most of what I'm going to say this morning is going to relate to the new dancer, the beginning dancer. We've been fortunate to have some good classes in South Texas for the last few years. One of the most important things that you can do as a teacher is, from day one, is take command. You as individuals have personalities, and you're going to have to do it in whatever way suits you best. You can do it with humor, some kind of subtle way, but you have to let those people know right up front who's the boss and who they better be listening to. Listening, and once you get their attention, is half the battle in getting those people to achieve the end result. So you got to have their full attention. You also need to tell them to turn their hearing aids up if they have a problem hearing. We definitely have that a lot. In fact, they spend the first half hour tuning us in. Another thing philosophy that I've used in my calling career almost since the beginning is that, and especially when you're dealing with new people, they don't know you. They don't know how to take you. Your brand of humor, if you have a brand of humor. Sometimes I almost feel that I have a sarcastic brand of humor. People who know me know how to take that and accept it and like me for it. People who don't know me may be totally turned off by that. So in the beginning, for me anyway, it's very important that I take my time with the people and I ease into it. I let them become comfortable with me. I let them learn a little bit about me and my personality, and hopefully I'll win them as a friend. My philosophy says that if you win people as a friend, you get away with murder as a caller. If they don't like you, they're going to balk on you every opportunity they get. If they like you, they'll even let you make mistakes and laugh about it, and it won't be any problem. From the very first day, the class should be fun and entertaining. In addition to being callers and instructors, guys, we're entertainers. Especially in the winter Texan or the retirement communities. These people are there for the twilight years of their life. And they are, they don't take anything too terribly serious. They're just there to have a good time. Yeah, they want some instruction and they want to learn how to dance, but it's got to be entertaining. So keep that in mind as you work with your classes. Keep it fun and upbeat. Also, by keeping it fun and entertaining, you're helping to sell the activity, that this is something that the people want to be a part of. In the beginning, I try to use just a very limited amount of material. You're not going to impress anybody with your vast knowledge of the activity, especially those new folks. They could care less. All they're interested in is moving, and moving successfully. I try to use some variety in both the choreography and the music, and there's a lot of variety that can be achieved with a very limited amount of material. All this just helps to build confidence for the dancer and lets them know that this is something that they could probably do. I even like to use singing calls. I don't know how many of you use singing calls from day one. Very good. That's excellent. My experience has been, especially with some newer callers trying to teach, if they use singing calls, they are sometimes limited to whatever that recording artist put on that idiot sheet. And what is on that idiot sheet is not always conducive to a new dancer. So you can't very well use that particular piece of music. So you find yourself searching out music that has real simple figures, or has figures that may fit into your daily class program. With a little bit of work, you guys can sit down and rewrite some of the material. I mean, with just little things like pass through and go around one, and simple things, time them out to the music. But the music in itself, not necessarily the choreography, but the music in itself will add a nice touch of variety to your overall class program. Both of my fellow panelists up here have talked about the fact that you need to be prepared and know your material. That's very important, and can't stress it enough, and I think they've covered that pretty well. You've got to introduce each movement on a step-by-step basis and in the most precise manner that you know how. And then be prepared to explain it, as Wade said, in several ways. Several years ago, when I first started with the Valley program in my teaching, I got terribly concerned that, I'm telling these people exactly what to do. Why aren't they doing it? It took me a little while to turn that situation around and realize that it's not their fault. Perhaps I'm not saying it well enough. So I find various ways to say the same thing. If you watch your people as you're saying the same things, basically the same thing over and over, but in slightly a different manner, you'll see lights go on. People's eyes will light up. Eventually you'll find something that strikes a chord with those individuals. A little example, just a brief one, like with the movement cast off 3/4. You can tell them by the definition, be very technical about it. I'm sure you've all heard the count the 3 wall theory. Sometimes people have a problem with fractions for whatever reason. 3/4 just does not hit. If you can get people in a uniform way to take 3 steps, they'll eventually figure out what the 3/4 is. I even have one thing, and this is the way I think, because I think a little backwards, and sometimes it works with some people. When I envision in my mind a cast off 3/4, I see myself backed up a quarter. It's kind of reverse thinking, but it works for me, and sometimes it drives home the point. Sometimes I tell them just go a half and a quarter more. Half and a quarter more makes more sense. For whatever reason, I can't explain why that works, but it does. In choosing your terminology to explain things, keep in mind that the dancers don't have access to the list, the programs, the reading material that you have access to, the things that you've studied. That terminology to us sometimes becomes second nature, and we refer to things the dancers have no idea what we're talking about. You have to take yourself back to basics. Try to remember back before you had any information whatsoever. And how I know as a beginning caller, I had other callers talk to me about zeros and equivalents and this line and that line and corner boxes and 1P, 2Ps, and as a young man, I didn't want to appear stupid, so I just stand there and go, and then walk away and think, where the heck did they figure all that out? When I'm teaching, I use a lot of help words, key things that helps the new dancer along, goes along with terminology. Little subtle things, and I'm sure you all do this, but tell the people exactly where they are. You're looking at your partner. You're looking at your corner. Your shoulders are square with the building. Don't dance on an angle. blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on. You're face to face. You're back to back. You're looking in. You're looking out. You're looking at the side walls. You're looking at the head walls. You're facing me. You're facing your partner. You're facing your corner. You're looking at the opposite sex. Keep moving. Don't hesitate. Smile. Get out of my face. Shut up. You're making me nervous. Maybe you should try bowling. I don't know. They're not subtle, but they make the point. Once you've introduced a call, it's important that you dance it over and over and over. Repetition is the name of the game. Doesn't have to be boring, but repetition is very important. I read somewhere, or somebody told me years ago, that a dancer, and don't hold me to these figures, and I don't know if there's any facts to back it up, but a dancer must execute a call correctly 80 some odd times before it's actually a part of them. So you figure if you got to do each call that many times, you got to do it over and over and over a lot. Some of the calls are more easily accepted by dancers than others, and we all know what those are, and the ones that you anticipate having a problem with, or a particular sequence that you might have a problem with. When dealing with those, it's important, for me anyway, to try to realize where the saturation point comes. At what point have I passed their attention span? If you go past that point, then you've lost them for the moment. And anything else you do, you might as well go over here and beat your head against this wall, because it's not going to help any further. So you assess when you reach that point. When you get to that point, just back off. Go have coffee, take a break. Sometimes just to get away from it for a few minutes, come right back and hit it again, you'll be surprised at the results. Just don't push too hard. Going back to what one or both of my friends said up here, in this particular situation, it's real important that the dancer win, and that's what I think kind of the theme of this whole convention is and has been, is the success of the dancer, and you can only do that if you keep them in mind constantly. I'll outline a few things here about dealing with some of those problem areas. You just again have to be very descriptive in your description of the movements. Be precise on how to execute each given call. You got to be persistent yet patient with those people. I use physical examples many times, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. Perhaps many of you are fortunate to have angels in your classes. And if you do, sometimes angels can be a real help or a real hindrance, depending on that particular group. Just the fact that maybe sometimes you can put some angels on the floor to demonstrate a particular call, to allow the newer dancers to see exactly how it flows through. Sometimes that's a help. If you don't have angels, perhaps sometimes I have had in the past some of my class members who seem to grasp things and flow through them a little quicker than some of the others. So I even use my class people as an example for other members in the class. I've even gone as far as draw diagrams. When teaching a clover leaf, sometimes I have a traffic problem. I get out a little chalkboard and draw a clover leaf and explain the clover pattern. Sometimes just seeing it from an overall view helps people relate to it just a little bit better. At other times I physically go into the square myself to help people on a one-on-one basis, just to get them to the proper spot. Or I'll go into the square myself, show them how to properly execute a particular call. Occasionally I'll go into the square to show people the incorrect things they're doing. And I know you've all seen that. Invariably you have one or two people, if you say face in, they face out. If you say turn right, they turn left. You got 7 people looking in a line, one guy looking out, and you say, everybody's looking in, everybody's looking in. And this one guy's going, who the heck is he talking to? Another little trick that I use in teaching is I always find that I have one or two good-natured people in the class. And I may not know those people right up front, and it takes me a little while to figure them out. And most recently, I had one individual who was just a real cut-up and a real kidder. And I use that individual as my fall guy. And even in his case, I kind of got him off to the side and explained to him that during the course of the class, I was going to be using him as my fall guy. Handle it, and he could laugh it off. But I could make a lot of points directly to the entire group by picking on this one guy. because I did not want to pick on the people that I was really talking to. Okay. We as callers are creatures of habit, just like dancers are creatures of habit. And it's real important that you present your material in a variety of ways, and do not present the same sequence of material in the same fashion every time you use it. Again, because we're creatures of habit, we tend to do that, maybe sometimes without even thinking. So if you work on variety, this will not only help your class, but it'll improve your overall calling skills, because it'll just force you to think about things in maybe a manner that you have not thought of before. It'll teach the dancers not to anticipate, because they won't really know what's coming next. It'll satisfy you and the dancers that they're actually learning the calls and not just going through prepared sequences. As a brief example of that, a number of years ago, I had a new dancer come to me who had been attending a class at another place. So they were very gung-ho, ready to go. And she walked up and she said, we're really enjoying the dance, but I said, would you call that call that goes heads lead right, circle two, align, break out, pass through, wheel and deal, double pass through, first couple go left, next couple go right? Yes. It's number 6 on the basic list. That's exactly right. So that's the type of thing I'm talking about. You know, we just as callers, if you get in the rut of calling that particular sequence and you're going to do it over and over and over, well, eventually those people are going to learn it. So therefore, if they think if you lead to the right, you're always going to circle to a line, which, as we all know, is not the case. There's a misconception among callers that variety can only be achieved through the introduction of more calls and more difficult patterns. But variety, especially at the beginner level, can be achieved by just merely changing the order which you give them those calls. Be complimentary to your dancers. Everybody likes to be praised, so reward them with a little praise or one. Just keeps everything on a real positive note, even when things aren't going well. Lie to them. Tell it like it is, guys. There's even times that you have to be critical, and you all know how that those occasions arise. When I have to be critical, I try not to ever single anybody out on an individual basis, unless I'm picking on my fall guy. I talk in generalities and try to talk to the entire group. Try to keep it lighthearted, maybe even humorous, to drive home the point. And that works occasionally. One more reality that I'd like to discuss, too, a little just briefly, is that the fact that a little thing, a realization that I've come to over a few years, not everybody's going to make it. At one point, I thought square dancing was for everybody, and I could teach anybody that could walk the square dance. Realization came a few years ago. There are some people that this activity is not for. And there's some people that are not ever going to get it. I don't care how long you teach them for whatever reason. You know, whether it's a hearing problem, a lack of interest, I don't know. But in those cases, you know, they can be a real detriment to your overall class. I don't possess the ability, and never have, to go to an individual and say, you don't belong here. Go elsewhere. But I have developed the ability to, at some point, and I don't give up quickly, I'm not saying this is an overnight thing I do, give them every ample opportunity to be a success, and even give them special attention along the way. But at some point in time, if you realize they're not going to cut it for the betterment of your entire group, you've got to go on and just let the strong will survive, I guess is the way to put it. Also, you should teach your entire program and use all the material. We do a dancer's injustice, and I know that this happens. I hear people talk about it. I think Wade touched on it. Some callers don't particularly teach or don't hit hard on a particular call because they don't particularly like it. I made the mistake one year of telling my beginners class that I was going to show them cross trail through. We wouldn't do it very much because they'd probably never hear it. They left. The guy comes back in the fall and he says, went home to my home club. He said, the first dance I went to, said this guy loved cross trail through. Said he called it all night long. Had no idea how to do it. So now I try to prepare them for everything. You want your dancers to be able to go out, dance to anybody, anywhere. So just briefly review here. You need to be prepared to know your material. Have a master plan for your classes. Take command. Be congenial. Keep it fun and entertaining. Use variety and build confidence. Review and refresh every session. Know when to back off. Use your examples and demonstrations. Be complimentary and prepare dancers by being thorough with your instruction. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob. Well, you have had 3 different sets of ideas, not completely different altogether, but at least 3 vocal opinions of what they think is important. Now we throw it open to you for questions, comments, whatsoever. However, we would like you to come up and use the mics because this is being taped, and we certainly would like to have some of your input in reaction to what the 3 of us have said up here. Who's first? Okay. State your name.
My name is John Burns. I'm a relative new teacher caller. I keep hearing teach by repetition, and yet the new thing is learn to dance by definition. I am confused at which one would come first, or would you keep them separate, or would one precede the other? Would you please elaborate on that for me?
Whatever.
I'm not just too sure I'm clear on your question. We said teach by definition?
Teaching by definition, they want to be an all-position dancer.
Okay. We turn it to Wade then.
Yeah, if I understand you correctly, all right. Yes, first and foremost, we're teaching by definition, okay? And through repetition, they're going to learn it. Now, when we say teach by definition, that does not mean you have to teach 17 different positions of that figure. Not in any way whatsoever. But I have found that if you teach them the definition of that figure, and this is what I was dwelling on so much while ago, you have to know that definition absolutely cold so you can interpret that definition for that dancer. For example, okay, let me pick run, okay? We teach boys run, girls run, centers run, okay? And we so often say boys run around the girls. That's wrong. The boys don't run around the girls. The boys run into that girl's position, and that lady slides over into his position. That's what run is. They didn't run around to the other side. They got a 5,000-foot chasm over there. They're going to fall to their death if they go out there because there's not a position in that square. But you as a caller have to understand that first. Then if you do, then all of a sudden you see the boy run. Then you also have to understand now, many times that guy's nervous and he's got a death grip on that lady's hand. And we're forever criticizing the lady, say, lady, stop turning around when that boy runs around you. She's not turning around, he's spinning around because he forgets to let go of her when he takes off and goes. You can make this fun and funny and still get across that definition to them without doing kinky, weird positions. Now, if you want to teach square through using 4 boys up front, or if you want to use half sashayed up front, whatever works for you best. I don't. I always think normal is normal, and I like to do it normal, okay? Or standard, as the Standard Applications Committee says. But I don't think matters as long as you communicate the definition of the figure properly to the dancer and then have them do it over and over and over and over. If that's understanding. Is that basically where we're at?
Well, you do this in repetition so that they know how to handle any position. Later, you start teaching with this concept.
Oh, okay, I understand. All right. Here, the question is, do we teach all position right up front, or do we save it for later? I think this varies from caller to caller. I teach standard right up front, okay, so that they know that definition and they can do it standard. I used to say, okay, we're going to learn this figure, and I would teach that figure from all the positions before I moved on. My personal opinion is I was wrong to do that. Okay, that's my personal opinion, and I've backed off, and I want them to learn how to square dance first, get them on the floor, make them happy, because some of those people want to learn all those positions. Some of those people don't want to learn all those positions, so it's got to be their choice, not my choice, and I was wrong, and I've tried to change my thinking. Okay.
Okay, I just want to add, at least I think this is my interpretation. This is when I referred to this book as a book that's been put out by CALLERLAB, which gives you the most common starting formations or positions for each move. And for example, Wade used boys run. Well, it says here, boys run, parallel right hand or left hand ocean waves. Now, I would think most of us will probably start with right hand waves to start with. Then it says a zero wave, a half wave, a one wave, a two wave. Well, the first thing we got to learn to know is what the hell do you mean by one and two waves? Half wave, maybe we've got some idea. Zero wave, we probably know if we've been in the business. So it would have probably, and then it says, comments. The most common application is from a half wave. Well, a half wave is the one with the boys in the middle, in the center. And so it's boys run is the most common one. So what I was saying is that I believe that that's where we should start. Now, how many times we put the boys in the middle, or how we get them there and ask them to run, to me that's repetition of the move. Okay, when I say boys, if I have a zero wave after a square through four step to a wave, and I say boys run with the boys on the end of the wave, that's hard and probably would fall flat in its face. And I think that's one that we do down the line. It may be a month from now, depending on our group and so on. Am I making myself clear about what I think is repetition and what is the next position? Okay? Okay. The chap in the red maroon.
Ken Riley from Naperville, Illinois. I have noticed that people who have serious problems with right from left also have trouble with related concepts, insides, outsides, in and out, and I suspect they might have some dyslexia. I wonder if you guys have some hints or techniques that might have worked for you to help these people grasp those kinds of concepts.
Bob, your turn.
Thank you. Yeah, the left hand's the one that makes an L.
Correct.
I have a lot of little. Oh, right hand is the one that makes the L. I try to do it. I don't know that there's a good answer to your question. I try to do it a lot of different ways. When I have a person who has a problem with their left hand, one of my pet things that I say to them, I say, of course, it's the one with the wedding ring on it. I see people, even people who've been dancing for years, at the advanced level, you tell them to do something to the right, and they throw their hands up in front of them like their hands are going to tell them which way to go. I tell ladies and gentlemen, I'll say, take your left hand, hold it in the air. We establish which one it is. I say, take the hand, put it on the ground. Stomp it with your right foot. The one that's hurting is your left. I don't know that there's a good answer for your question.
I think this is a common problem, though, because particularly people who are left-handed. I have a good friend of mine who is left-handed, and we dance C1s, a little bit of C2 type of thing, And as Bob says, when even in the dancing challenge, you put up the two, you say something with your left, and he's standing there looking to see which hand he should have, and.
My point is, it's other things besides just...
Yep. Oh yes, definitely. Yeah.
I had a lady a few years ago that seemed like whatever I told her. If I told her to look in, she looked out. If I said turn right, she turned left. And she came to me and she said, I'm having a terrible, terrible time. And the only thing I could tell the lady, and it seemed to work, and I was being facetious when I said it, I said, darling, when I tell you to face in, your natural tendency is to look out. So whatever your tendency is, do the opposite. And she straightened up.
There's a couple of three things that I use, because you're right. So often we're faced with the right-left lack of distinguishing and inside-outside. and in and out, right? And I normally, when I start my classes down there, particularly since I've been in Arizona, knowing that you're going to have certain people who have difficulty distinguishing right from left, in from out, and so on. And as a rule, those people avoid situations that will make that fact rise to the surface because it's embarrassing for some of those folks. So I anticipate that at the beginning of my classes and tell them up front, there are some of you who are going to have difficulty distinguishing right from left, and what's inside and what's outside the square, and what's forward and behind you, and so on, okay? I said, I'll tell them ahead, there are ladies who are, no matter what comes down, they're going to try and see what's going on behind them, okay? Now, to avoid, or try to avoid it up front, if you already know in advance that you have a little difficulty in that thing, I suggest one, wear you a ring or a bracelet or something very identifiable on your right hand and something else on your left hand. Nobody else will know it, but it will kind of give you a clue up front and get you in that habit of knowing which one is which. A lot of folks, you'd be amazed, they reach 75 years old and they've never had to know what was right or left. The blinker on your car is either down or up. It's not left or right. Okay? And half the ladies don't use the darn thing anyway. So what difference does it make? All right? Now, I'm sorry, ladies. I just couldn't pass it up. Anyway, I was in Florida and I saw a bumper sticker on the back from people who live in Florida. It says, when I retire, I'm going to move north and drive slow. Anyway, that's the left-right. The in and out, one of the things I teach them, if both hands are occupied, you're inside. If one hand is occupied, you're outside. Works almost all the time. At least my percentage of success is going to be higher than this would have been. All right? So if both hands are occupied, you're inside. If one hand's occupied, you're outside. Accomplishes two things. First of all, it lets them know what's in and out. Second of all, it makes them touch hands. All right? And that kind of helps there. On the forward and back, a couple of things. On the inside, outside. With the ladies, normally what I'll do is that right up front, we'll get in lines. I'll have everybody, all the ladies, make a U-turn back right now. Turn around to get a good look, because there ain't nothing going on back there. Now get out of your system. We turn back around. We go and go the other way. All right. But you try to make it as humorous as you can, but make the point stick. When I teach walk and dodge, okay, I have the whole crowd get in. And if you come to one of my classes toward the end of the year, I'll say touch quarter, and before I say it, I say, all right, how many? Nobody, because nobody turns around on a walk and dodge. All right, and it's like a big college cheer, man. Off we go, we go. But at least, because if you really look at our choreographical applications, we just turn our ladies every 7 ways from upside down. We do not take their body flow into consideration. They do all the twirls, all the turns. It started with Fred Astaire and it hadn't changed since. They do all the work. All right? So we've got you realize we only have one move in all of square dancing that starts with the left hand without saying the word left. And that's start through. That's for the ladies. They just got to know they use the left hand. Everything else starts with the right hand. Unless you use the word left. Well, all right, I'll take it back. But fan the top is center's hand, is a center hand. It's not left or right, it's center hand. It's center hand, okay? But it helps in teaching people to say, well, stick your right hand out there. 99% of the time, you're going to be right. Now, maybe I'm not sticking to the absolute letter of the law, but they win. If they win, I win. And that's the name of the game. Anyway, that's the only thing I try to use, because you're right. It does exist. There's no question about it. That some people don't know the left and the right. And Flippo told me years ago, if you know there's a call that you're going to do, and you know that this spot right here, they're going to screw up, then before you call it, won't you tell them ahead of time they're going to screw up there so you not have the accident to begin with? You know? If you know that's where they're going to screw up, why do it and laugh at them? Why not tell them ahead of time, don't step in the pothole, lady? You know, avoid it.
And those are the things you learn with experience. And you try to do better for the next time. Yes, right here.
number of years ago when I started teaching, Bob Furman, St. Louis, Missouri. Sorry, a number of years ago when I started teaching, there was a caller in the area that I admired his teaching very, very much. And I went to several of his classes over a period of time. And I learned from him, and he told me, he said, anything that you teach these people, transfer it to normal street language. You read all these definitions from whoever they may be, and maybe you understand the definition with those terms in it, but you transfer that term to normal street language, and the people will understand it much better. The fewer words you use to explain a call and can get it across and get them dancing, the faster they're dancing that call, the more they will remember that call over a period of time, because you haven't bored them to death for 5 minutes while you've told them how to do a right and left through. Use quick street terms where everybody understands it, get it over with, get them back to dancing. They're not there to hear you talk. The name of the game is square dancing.
Thank you. And one other thing I'd like to just add to that I hear every once in a while. Everybody will give a statement saying, okay, or right, or extra words added in there. And I believe that helps to confuse the dancer. Every extra word that you add makes him think about that word. And he doesn't have to think about that word. We were talking about the right and left there a second ago. What I have tried to start using the idea of, instead of using right, which is, we're talking right and left hands, I use the word correct. And then there's no confusion about what we're saying. Okay, our time is just about up. We could probably go on and on and on here as far as this is concerned. First of all, I would like to offer my appreciation to Wade and Bob for coming in this morning and being a part of this panel and offering certain suggestions and so on.
Could I say one small little thing?
Wade wants to say one thing, and I want to finish up.
Okay, you go ahead. Just one thing I'd like to ask. You know, we sit down in the restaurants, in the hallways, and downstairs in the bar, or I know not many people go there, but whatever, and wherever you happen to be, and we discuss, boy, how do you get to this right and left grand? Boy, how do you get to out and left? I challenge you to sit and have conversations about how do you teach a scoot back? How do you teach a swing through? What's the best way you have of teaching a U-turn back? Try that. You just might help our activity. Thank you.
You got a word, Bob? Okay. I'd just like to leave you with this little story that I read not too long ago. And this was about the stewardess that was sent back to school. And she was sent back to school because every time a passenger left her airplane, she said, "I'm glad to have had you."
I love it.